Merry Christmas. Light dawns on a weary world. I thought Pastor Dave said it so well last night that if we could choose a word to describe our world, sometimes that word would be weary. I want to tell you a story from my childhood. When I was a kid, I had 4 brothers and sisters, and so on Christmas Day, we would often all pile into a minivan, stick a bunch of kids hyped up on a lot of sugar and a little bit of sleep in the back of a minivan, and you know about how that goes. We would pile in, and we would drive 2 hours up to Roanoke, Virginia, to go and see my grandparents. And we would get out, and my parents would have packed the back of the minivan full of presents. And we would go into my grandparents' house, and we would open up all of the presents. And I have to confess, I remember very few of what was in those boxes, as I'm sure all of us do. It kind of fades into the past. But I remember one particular Christmas where I had the very best present and the very worst present all in the same package. I went and opened up these boxes, lovingly wrapped, just laden with tissue paper, and I opened them up, and what was inside was my grandmother's labor. Probably over the past full 12 months, she had hand-stitched these beautiful dresses for me. And as a 10 or maybe 12-year-old, I looked at these dresses, and I knew that they were going to be itchy. My parents had trained me well, and so I said, "Thank you, Grandma. I love them. Thank you." Thankfully, the next boxes had the same dresses, just in miniature version. She had made for my American Girl dolls these beautiful dresses. And those I really did love. But then the next boxes came for my brothers. And they opened up their boxes. And inside of their boxes were 2 brand new video games. This was the days of Game Boy. And I really wanted a Game Boy. And my brothers had both opened these wonderful Game Boys. I tried, but I don't think I hid my disappointment very well. I don't think I hid my envy very well. And to this day, when I go down to the basement and I look at the box that's labeled basement, dresses, dolls, I just have this sense of guilt for not being as thankful as I think I should be for those hand-stitched dresses. We stand here on Christmas morning, and the presents are opened, the bows are squished on the ground, the luster of everything has already started to wear off just a little bit, and we recognize that we really do live in a weary world where we carry around some guilt, maybe some disappointment. Perhaps you got what you wanted, and it's yet still not quite filling that hole in your heart, or perhaps you didn't get what you wanted. Or perhaps you're lonely, or perhaps you're sad, or perhaps you're still overjoyed. But yet we know that beyond these walls there is a weary world. And that's why I think it is so important that every Christmas morning we stand and we read these verses of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These ancient words remind us that it's not about just this morning, it's not about presents, it's not about glitter, it's not even about hearing the Christmas story with new eyes, but it's about presence, true presence, the presence of God that's been with us not just since last night when we first said Merry Christmas, not even since the first Christmas, but forever. Since before we were even created. Light has dawned on a weary world. And that's what we gather together to celebrate. Not presents, but true presence. God, very God, with us. We use this big word at Christmas time, incarnation. And literally that carne means flesh. That God for us has come and has put on flesh and bones so that God can truly be right here. One of my good friends, a pastor down in Virginia, posted a picture of when he was in Israel. He posted a picture of a manger. And we think about, like we saw last night here, a wooden trough. But mangers often in the Holy Land were not made of wood because wood was very sparse. Wood was a rare commodity, something hard to come by. And also wood would very quickly disintegrate. It would get wet and it would break down. And so mangers were often made of stone. They would be about this high. And so I imagine Mary laying her child in a manger, but only for a short while. Very quickly, that manger would be needed. Mangers are functional pieces. So Mary perhaps could use it for a while, but then I imagine that very quickly the goats and the sheep would need to be watered the next morning. And Jesus, that very small bed that he was given, very quickly would be given back to the world to be used. Jesus comes and is present with us, but does not leave us, continues to be here, continues to serve the world in the places that need God the most. One of my favorite stories, Christmas stories, is The Gift of the Magi. Have you read it? It's the story of a married couple, very poor, and the woman comes to Christmas Eve and she realizes she's only saved $1.87. Not nearly enough to buy the watch chain that she wants to get for her husband. And so she goes, and her pride, joy, her beautiful hair, she cuts and sells so that she can buy the watch chain. And her husband similarly realizes that he also has no money to buy presents. And so he goes and sells that same grandfather's watch to buy the combs that she wanted so badly. The author ends by saying that they are both fools and yet wise at the same time. But what I remembered, or rather hadn't remembered when I reread this story, is that what they do at the end is they simply sit down and put the pork chops in and sit and eat together. They don't mourn over each other's lost gifts. They just put on the pork chops and are present with each other. I think that's such a wonderful picture of what Christmas should be. We open the gifts, yes, we celebrate, and then we put on the pork chops, and we care for one another, and we're present for one another, and we bear Christ to one another. Ultimately, that's what baptism really is here for Ava and for Charlotte and for Thea. Baptism is ultimately coming to the waters, saying to these children, we care about you, we want to be present with you, and we know that God is going to be present with you. The Word, the light breaking into this world each and every day, that you will never be alone. Not because you have wonderful families to gather around you, because you do, but because God promises through the incarnation, through the presence, to put on your very flesh and to be here in these waters. Light dawns on a weary world. Let us rejoice and give thanks, for God is with us. Amen.